Hey, welcome to the Warrior Restaurant Podcast, the Warrior Zone. This is the official podcast for Warrior Restaurants where we get real, raw, relevant, and focus on kick-ass results. Today, I am joined by my fellow Warrior trainer, Marcus Osterhout, who is here today calling from sunny Dana Point, California. Marcus, welcome to the podcast. Hey, please, for the listeners, introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your background in the restaurant industry.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. And so I got into the whole restaurant industry, went straight out of high school, going into a coffee shop. There's a small coffee shop chain called Diedrich Coffee in 1998, and got to work alongside the owner of that, Martin Diedrich, and learned everything I didn't know about coffee. And spent the better part of 6 years in that coffee shop before a girlfriend at the time had said, "Hey, you should try restaurant management." Never had worked in a restaurant, so jumped 2 feet into the restaurant. Instead of being a server or bartender or busboy, I just became a manager because that's fun. And, and so I was
put fire, man. I'm telling you, that was smart.
So I joined a company called Claim Jumper, and they had a 4-month training program. 3 months was in the back of the house. So I started as a dishwasher, a prep cook, a baker, line cook, then kitchen manager, and then expediter, and then only 1 month out on the floor. And then I graduated and I was a manager. And it was the school of hard knocks. Most of the managers had been at that position already for 20 some odd years, and they had their systems already in place. That it was a lot of nitty gritty details of breaking down P&Ls, walking out to the floor, and all that stuff. So I really grew my teeth at Claim Jumper, and then left. They got acquired by Landry's, and then moved over to Nick's, small little restaurant chain, kind of upscale, and then went to Starbucks for 6 years. And then at the same time, a friend of mine had reached out who had bought an Italian restaurant. And then he said, "Hey, can you come help me? I don't know what the hell I'm doing." So I came in initially just to help him here and there, ended up partnering up with him, pushing in the last bit of my inheritance that I'd gotten from my dad, and had a steak and seafood restaurant for 3 years until the government decided that we were non-essential due to COVID, and we had to shut it down. So
you gotta love the government.
My story.
You gotta love the government deciding who's essential, who's not essential, right?
Talking about it, interesting time.
So talk about, in Warrior Restaurants, we talk about the blend of the TRC method with the Warrior way. Tell us a little bit about your introduction into the Warrior's way.
Yeah, so it was I'd always heard about it. So I was a store manager at Starbucks, and I'd seen the videos on social media of Garrett White kind of yelling into a camera, and something about it just kind of grabbed me. But then as I looked into it, it was for their tagline was for married elite entrepreneurs. I'm like, well, I was married, wasn't an entrepreneur, and I didn't really see myself as elite being a Starbucks store manager. But the principles were still true. So I was like, well, screw you. I don't have 10 grand to go to this like Warrior Week thing, but I still could learn from this. And so kind of from a distance, I was trying to learn what they were teaching and trying to apply it. And then they opened up a few events throughout the years that I started to go to. And then from there, I started to adopt the principles of focusing on my own life, body, being, balance, and business. And once I started doing that, I started to see, kind of the momentum, the increase in power, the increase in clarity. I always say, power is a function of capacity. And if you can focus on your body, your being, and your balance, you increase your capacity in order to handle what's in front of you at your business. And so, and that was a principle that I applied initially at Starbucks. And I was in a high volume drive-through store, and they were struggling with their drive drive-through times. So Starbucks has a metric that when you pull up to the window, they want a certain amount of time, like the clock starts, they want a certain amount of time for you to drive up the window, get your order, pay for it, and then leave. And what is considered good is 40 seconds or less.
Holy shit.
And we took it. Yeah. And so you would have 5 cars and someone would order. And by the time that car gets up here, you need to have the entire order ready and be able to be efficient with your handoff. So we took our average drive-through time from, it was about like 1 minute and 20 seconds, sometimes 1.5 minutes, down to 37 seconds.
Holy shit.
And I used the warrior method in order to do that, just to reverse engineer what we wanted to do and how to streamline and get real efficient with it.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And you would think like, an hour, I mean, or 1 minute and 30 seconds, that's not much time. But man, people go crazy when things like take like longer than they expect. Like I've seen this at Starbucks. People like losing their shit, screaming and yelling at somebody. Yeah, I mean, like total crazy. Yeah.
I've seen it. I've been in the face of it. It's yeah.
What's the most outrageous thing someone ever yelled at you about at Starbucks?
I had a guy that was wearing his, it was in the fall, and he was wearing like his tweed coat, wearing sunglasses, even though it was cloudy outside, kind of that persona.
Yeah.
And he asked to speak to the manager and said, "Look, I'm not a demonstrative person." Well, that's a 10-cent vocabulary word that you don't just drop on someone at 6 o'clock in the morning. And he was saying, I told her, and again, what are we arguing about? We're talking about a cup of coffee.
No shit.
We're not talking about, listen,
you got my surgery. I got my surgery wrong. You took out my kidney instead of my, this. You took out the wrong you amputated the wrong fucking arm. No, we're not talking about anything like crazy shit. Hey, listen, my coffee was fucked up.
And people got so intense, and if it's wrong and they had to wait, it becomes the principle of what ignites people. And my family, because I would come home for so many years, restaurant too, and just say, share stories. I'm like, I just don't get surprised anymore.
I know people ask me all the time, how do you write so many books? I go, just hang out in a restaurant, man. You'll get all kinds of stories. You just go to and what my favorite place is? Go to a coffee shop and just sit in there and listen to people, like interact with the staff. I mean, again, they're just assholes most of the time. They're so demanding, and the people are just trying to do their best. Or to sit at the table and listen to other people's conversations about how screwed up their lives are. And like, you realize like, shit, man, I thought I had some problems. I think my problems are pretty good, actually. I don't think my stuff's that bad.
Right. And here's the interesting nuance about coffee. And this takes it like a little bit deep, but this is why I love coffee so much. Not only do I love the flavor, I love the journey from planting a seed to the cup, and the journey that seed actually goes to finally having, a cup of coffee. But when you trace back the origins of coffee, back to Galdi, the goat herder out in Ethiopia. Did you hear about this story?
No.
Okay, so there's this goat herder out in Ethiopia. This is like 500 AD, something like that. Really, really long time ago. And he notices his goats are eating this like bushy tree with like these red cherries on it. And afterwards, they start running around circles, jumping up and down, getting all frenzied up. And he starts wondering, what are they eating that's causing this behavior? Well, they went over to the tree. They apparently, as legend goes, they pulled off all these cherries. And a coffee cherry it looks like a grape almost, and then the actual beans inside. So they start eating that, and that didn't really taste very good. And so they start playing around with different methods to get the bean out. And then crush the bean without roasting it, that's not going to taste good. And so
Right.
all this trial and error to eventually get to what we have as coffee now.
Wow.
But once they did, think about in history, how many decisions and how many conversations have been made over a cup of coffee. I always said I wanted to write a book just of thoughts and conversation starters and title the book Over a Cup of Coffee.
There you go.
Because, I mean, countries have been divided, marriages have been either saved or ended, relations, businesses, schoolwork, you name it, all over this little black, nectar of the gods.
That's so crazy, man. Yeah, it just like sometimes when people come up with crazy thoughts and things like, you're like, man, I just want to thank that person who decided that was hey, like I'm watching my goats jump around acting like they're on crack, and and it took them down this like idea, like what the hell is going on here, and then we came up with the coffee we know today, which is crazy. Yeah. So let's kind of circle back to the warrior way and the warrior's way with business. And so again, there's 4 domains we all talk about in the warrior's way. It's body, being, balance, business. Body. Let's talk about body a little bit. How do you ensure like your physical health and stamina kind of match the demands of being a restaurateur? When you are a restaurateur and as an entrepreneur, what are some of the things that you do to ensure your health and stamina are on point all the time?
Yeah, great question. So I've been an athlete all my life.
Mhm.
And when I was growing up as a young boy in Texas, I played every sport there was: baseball, basketball, football, one stint of soccer. I didn't really like running. But and then was on swim team. Then I moved to California and I became a surfer. So I've been a surfer for almost 30 years.
Wow.
So long before the Warrior's Way, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and getting down to the beach and paddling out just as there's enough light to see, big waves I'm passing by, and getting a surf in for 2 hours, walking on the beach barefoot, getting grounded, being in salt water, and then getting exercise surfing, and then getting out, having some breakfast, and suddenly it's like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm like walking around wide awake, just like, I'm ready to tackle the day, like just my normal lifestyle. And I didn't know that there was any science or anything to it. And then once I found the Warrior's Way, and I understood someone breaking that down, I'm like, it just aligned with what I was already doing. And so I've always believed in waking up early and and doing something active, even if it's just taking the dog out for a walk, getting out in some of the early morning light, which there's a whole lot of research behind that, and just walking, breathing some crisp air, and just getting your body moving like that. That alone will put you put you above everyone else. And I always say, even though I work there, Starbucks is not a strategy for the day.
No, it is not. It's a good Kickstarter, but it's not a strategy. Oh my God. I remember one time I did a consulting job back in the 90s in Telluride, and we were pushing out and I was the consultant, and I hired a guy to be the chef of the place, and we were like pushing out this new menu, and it was like, and the place was busy too. So it's like we were like coming in super early in the morning to do like menu development and recipe development. And then in the afternoon, like between lunch and dinner rush, we'd be like in the kitchen, just, in the prep area, just pounding out stuff like that. And I remember we would just like, we were fueled up on Starbucks. It was crazy. I remember one afternoon, we just kind of hit that wall. When you hit that wall, when you have like too much coffee and then you crash.
Oh, yeah.
Up in the office. And I remember like we were sitting in the office, like we're sitting on this, and this guy had a really nice office, and they had these like sofas, and we're sketching out a bunch of like stuff like that. And next thing I know, someone's like pounding on the door. I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on? It's like, well, hey man, we're getting ready for dinner service. I'm like, holy shit, what time is it? We had like drank so much coffee and just like crashed, and we just both like just passed out. And it was like, I was like, oh my God, that's horrible, man. When you get to the point where like you've just been fueled on coffee for days,
Oh
and
yeah.
you finally you just break down. Your body just finally says, that's it, we're out, we're done. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I even got to the point where I lost the flavor for coffee.
Oh yeah.
Just, I my doctor said like, hey, coffee is actually not good for your body, the way your body processes it, and you get the sweats and everything like that. And so I tried decaf, and I was trying to drink, and I eventually just stopped drinking coffee for about a year. I just drank water. I'd go in the coffee shop and
Wow.
they'd give me a venti size cup of water with no ice, room temperature, and I would just drink that all day long,
Wow.
which is great. And I only recently, came back to it, but it's only in small quantities, and I just enjoy it for what it is now.
Yeah. So what's your favorite type? What's your favorite type of coffee? What's your roast you like?
I like a medium roast. Usually, the South American blends are usually my favorite. They're usually like a little bit nutty, a little bit slight acidity. Mexico is probably one of my favorite ones, or Guatemala.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I like my coffee very, very, I like lots of lots of heavy cream, lots of sugar. My coffee is more like dessert. That's when, if I ever drink coffee, it's you're gonna be like, what the hell is that? It's not even Donald. It's like white. It's like what is that? It's like, yeah, that's how I drink coffee. I don't drink coffee that
Yeah.
much, but when I do, I gotta like, yeah. I'm more of a tea drinker. I do like chai tea. Chai tea is like my favorite. So I do like chai tea in the morning. That's like my thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember when I travel like over to the Maldives in the winter for vacation a lot of times, and there's always on the flights there, they always have like this nice, really good like Marcella chai tea, and it's like really, really nice. I'm just like drinking. When I went to the Maldives this last winter, and I wrote I wrote Savage Restaurant Success on most of the flight. I just like get down there, the flight attendant, more tea. And just kept going. Yeah. This book was fueled on chai tea. I'm telling you. So speaking of, we talk about body, we talk about fitness, we talk about fuel. So coffee, again, not really good fuel. It's a nice little kick, but you can't like sustain yourself on that kind of fuel. What do you do for fuel? What's kind of like your go-to in the daytime?
Yeah. So initially, I just do a green shake in the morning. And when I was first getting into it, it was just throwing a bunch of spinach in the blender with a little protein powder and a little almond milk and
Yeah.
some agave to sweeten it up so it doesn't taste like lawnmower clippings. And and now it's just a powder that we get sent to us every month. And now the whole family drinks it every single morning.
Oh, really?
My 3-year-old wakes up in the morning and is like, "Daddy, can we make green juice now?" Literally every morning, guaranteed, like
Wow,
clockwork.
that's really cool.
So
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
stuff
that's just
changed so much. It used to be horrible tasting. The flavor profiles out there on green drinks are a lot better now. Yeah. Yeah,
so
we
that's
got the. Go ahead. Which brand do you like?
the one we've been using is called Transform.
I've heard of that one. I heard that one's pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a berry flavor.
Yeah. The ones I like the Warrior Greens. Those are good. The wild berry flavor. I do like the First Form Opti Greens. I used to use those a lot too. And then now, of course, Warrior Restaurants has our own supplement line called Limitless. And we have an apple cinnamon trover, which now has become my favorite. I'm not saying just because it's a Warrior Restaurants brand, but it's actually, I tried a lot of different flavors and I tried a lot of different kind of formulas before I kind of found this formula that I really like. But I think it's, you had it when you were here in town, right? You tried the greens, right?
It was delicious. I had that and the afternoon reds.
Oh, I like the reds too. Yeah, that's like my favorite go-to. So like my fuel kind of regimen is like so I give in the morning, I do a pre-workout, I go work out. After workout, I usually do a post-workout kind of protein kind of recovery drink right away. As soon as I get done working out, I have some recovery from my workout. And then as soon as I get here, then I usually have my greens in the morning And then at lunchtime, I usually do like some supplements. And then usually around 2 or 3 o'clock, I do my afternoon reds. And a lot of people say, "Do the reds give you energy?" I don't really, I don't think they have they don't have anything in there really for energy. But I find that the nutrients and the antioxidants really help me kind of power through that slump in the afternoon, which I like.
Right.
I don't want to be jacked up in the afternoon because then I find I can't sleep good.
Yeah.
So,
Totally agree.
yeah, a lot of people like to go for those, the afternoon Red Bulls. That's the thing that most people do now, especially in a restaurant.
I was out on a surf trip with Garrett, and we stopped by a gas station because we were out in Texas because we were going to Waco, and they have one of the famous wave pools in the country out there in the middle of nowhere, Podunk, Texas. And so we stopped by this gas station just to get some waters, and Garrett and the guys grabbed those 5-hour energy drinks.
Oh yeah, I remember those things.
I'm like, I've never tasted one. He passed it to me. I tasted it. I was like, oh my gosh, it tastes like
so
like
bitter.
Dimetap and chemicals mixed together.
No shit. It's horrible. They're horrible. There's a reason why they're a shot, because you gotta choke that sucker down so fast. That's why they're like little shots, because they are so nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like that can't be good for your liver or your body to have to process that crap. And so here's the other part. You're asking about like what a regimen. So rewind the clock back to I'm about 18 years old. I'm graduating from high school, and we go on a surf trip down to Baja California. And we camp, me and like 5 or 6 guys, we camp on the beach for 5 days. It was super fun. We're eating fish tacos, we're surfing, we're drinking beers, and everything's great. And we're, sleeping in tents and sleeping bags, like on the dirt. And we come back, and my friend, he says, "Hey, my parents are chiropractors, and they said, have everyone come to the office because I'm sure everyone's going to need an adjustment." I'm like, "What do you mean an adjustment? I don't get it." And so he's like, "Oh, you'll see." And so we go in there, and I get introduced to the world of chiropractic, and specifically the art of applied kinesiology or muscle testing.
wow.
And to where utilizing an extremity, you can test any ailment in the body, any type of subluxation of the body, even down to testing any emotions that are not congruent with what's going on in your body. She's like, to just kind of give a simple description, like when you're driving and someone cuts you off, what do you typically do? He's like, no, freeze, hold that position.
Yeah.
Now, what emotions are going on in that moment right there? I'm scared, I'm nervous, anxiety, anger, stress, anger, all those things. Now, where do you think those emotions actually could live?
Oh yeah.
And start pointing to it.
Shoulders, neck.
And so it, and without going, derailing it, but emotions can basically live and harbor in different areas of your body.
Oh wow.
Because it's almost like a freeze frame in time. And so there's techniques to release those emotions and top of doing the actual adjustment. So that, with a 22-year-old hearing that, suddenly I was curious. And so I started going in once a week to get an adjustment, and I had like 10 questions to ask every single week. I was fascinated because I grew up in Western medicine, where if you get sick, then I was growing up where breakfast was a glass of orange juice, a glass of milk, toast, bacon, and then and that's just what you did, because that's what they did in the 50s. And the 80s were the misinformation age, and I had no idea about any of this. And so suddenly I'm learning about being alkaline versus being acidic. I was learning about different supplements to take. I was learning about how different foods affect the body, and how when you get an adjustment, it actually boosts your immune system. Specifically, when you get a cervical adjustment, so up here in your upper cervical area, they've seen in your immune system, which is just levels in your blood, that there's a 300% boost to your immune system after you get your neck adjusted.
Oh wow.
So So when I would get sick, literally the first thing that I did, go to the chiropractor.
Maybe that's what I need.
Absolutely, because that's going to allow your body to be able to heal itself and harmonize at the right frequency and be able to attack it. Because you want to send basically when you do that. So imagine like I've got a faucet and I turn it on. I'm about to water the garden and I put my foot on the hose. Now all of a sudden that hose is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
There's a blockage. As soon as I remove that blockage, boom, everything comes out. Phagocytes, monocytes, T helper cells, red blood cells, everything comes. It's like all the reinforcements come to the front line and start attacking all the bacteria and viruses and actually starting healing you from the inside out.
That's amazing, man. You know, a lot of people don't even think about this stuff. We just like, you know, what's Western medicine? Just take a pill, dude. You know? Yeah. There's so many things. And you talk about frequency and vibrations. That kind of leads me into the next of the core four, being. How do you kind of stay connected to your higher power, your higher vibration, your higher energy? What do you do on a daily basis to make sure that part of being, which is, you know, your mindset, your connection with God, how do you maintain that? How do you keep that vibration at the level you need to?
Yeah. So I was raised as a Christian in a Baptist and Episcopalian church. And then when we moved out to California, so it was always very formal, you know, wear your Sunday best, you know, kids in suits that, look like they're just like little penguins marching into church. And and then we moved out to California and we visited a non-denominational church called Calvary Chapel. And we walked in there and my mom was like, this is home. People are wearing sandals and shorts and they got their hands raised up. And it's just like this freedom to express yourself as you should. And she's like, this is what I've been craving. And, you know, and I just kind of followed suit and then eventually, accepted it for my own walk of life. Right. And in 2000, I became a pastor and was
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I was involved in a Bible study at that church with the college group. And then I had, just asked if I could help out. And he's like, yeah, could you start teaching a home Bible study? And I was like,
wow.
Sure. I've never really taught anything, but I'll try. And he's like, dude, here's the recipe for success. This is the pastor speaking. His name was Marcus as well. He's like, show up and be faithful.
Show up and be faithful.
That's a recipe for success in ministry. Just show up and be faithful. God will take care of the rest.
I think that's a recipe for pretty much for anything in life. Just show up and be faithful. Be committed to who you are. Be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. And so I mean, every morning start off with prayer, with meditating on God's word. And like one of the verses in the Bible that I love was, it's, it talks about dwelling on the things that are good, like things that are good, things that are good repute, things that are healthy, things that are wise. Dwell on these things. I like that word dwell because when you're sad and you're morose, you tend to dwell on your problems. And the Bible's like, whatever is good, whatever is honorable, whatever is of good repute, dwell on those things. And it just puts your mind in alignment of God, just focusing on, the things that are good in this world and his creation and, really thinking from God, the real abundant mindset.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, hey, now that I know you're a minister, now I'm gonna have also on the Warrior Restaurants call when we get into being. I'm gonna have you lead a little bit of stuff, dude. I'm gonna have you step it up a little bit. Get our Jesus on.
You got it. Come to Jesus.
I'm telling you, baby. I mean, no, hey, and I don't want to make this a Bible beating session but I will tell you right now that most of my life, my business was really, really good. And my coaching stuff was really, really good. And, my good friend Thax really pushed me to go to Warrior. And he always said that, you're just one thing missing in your business, dude. There's one thing missing that will open up the door and unlock everything for you. And he says, you need God in your life. And, and I, for years, I mean, I've known Dax for 10 years and yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, man. And Dax was always like, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And it wasn't until I really kind of got reconnected that I realized, yeah, that was missing. And then now, like, everything's really just like the doors of possibilities have opened, and it's been an amazing experience. So
I remember I asked you that, when I met you in October down in Dana Point, and you'd only been in Warrior for a couple months, and I said, "What's one thing that you really gained from Warrior?" And you just like stopped and you looked at me and you're like, "My connection with God."
It was it. That was like the missing piece to, like, everything else was jamming in my life. I mean, my business was really doing well. And you've seen. 14 years of doing the coaching stuff, and it's been great. I built a really, really great brand, but the brand just always seemed to plateau. I couldn't get to that next level, and I just didn't realize. And just like anything in life, when you're at a certain level and you hit a plateau and there's another level, the things that are going to get you to that next level are usually the skills you don't have, and there's usually some element missing in your life. I didn't realize that thing was holding me from that gap to that next level was my connection to God. And when I made that connection, it just elevated everything else in my life. I mean, everything had more clarity. I sleep better. I feel like I have a bigger purpose now. I feel like I've actually been, called up to help on a bigger scale. I mean, I've always wanted to help a lot of restaurants, but now I see it as a kind of a global kind of thing. And there's so many restaurants out there, so many restaurateurs that are suffering because they're so focused on that business first model. And you and I have done it. We're so focused on the business. Fix that business part, then I'll go back and fix my family life. I'll go back and fix my relationships with my kids. I'll go back and fix my health. But man, you can't put all that stuff in the back burner anymore.
Well, and also when you think about, like I said before, power is a function of capacity. In the Bible, you go to, the first book, Genesis, right? Mm-hmm. Genesis 1:1. God created the heavens and the earth. Stop right there, and just take yourself for a second and imagine what that looks like. There is nothing. In fact, nothing doesn't even exist. That there's a mind bender for you. The word
That's
nothing.
A mind bender. There's like nothing. There's nothing in nothing. I mean, a void.
Right.
Yeah.
Void. And literally it says that the Spirit of God moved across the void. And so sitting outside of the realm of time, God creates the heavens and the earth. And I always picture like this madman Picasso with like a blank canvas and like cans of paint and clay, and literally just throwing things against the wall. And like, here's a planet, like here's Jupiter, boom. And here's Pluto, boom. Here's a universe, boom. And like, think about the capacity that you would need to build a universe on the macro level and then on the microscopic level, and then put it all in harmony and balance so that all works together at a delicate balance. And you imagine that type of power and capacity. And then when God says, align yourself with me, not with a theory of God, and he's like, with me, and watch what I can do. If you say to that mountain, move, it'll be moved.
Yeah.
Like he tries to convey like the amount of power, you can't even fathom it. You can't even get close to it. Mm-hmm. And so when you align that with the purpose of what you've been given, the stewardship that you've been given to reach people in whatever capacity you have, then like literally it's, to use your term, it's limitless.
It is limitless. Yeah. And that leads us to, like, you're talking about alignment and balance and stuff like that. Another one of the core four we talk about is balance. How do you maintain those relationships? What do you do on a daily basis to nurture the relationships with your spouse, to nurture your relationship with your kids, nurture a relationship with your friends? What do you do on a daily basis? How are you committed to making sure that those things don't get overlooked?
Yeah, I'd say on a daily basis,
Hmm.
initially it's waking up with the kids every morning and spending time with them, making breakfast and lunches. Now, sometimes don't have the deepest of conversations with them early in the morning, but driving to school and just phones down, kind of radio on. Sometimes my son and I will listen to Battle of the Sexes. It's like a question type thing, and we'll just
Oh, cool.
laugh and just something. On if I
Mhm.
take my daughter to school, then just try to have a conversation on the way there and back. But just spending intentional time with them. Same with my wife. And it's hard because we have a 3-year-old. So and he
Yep.
wakes up pretty early, and so he's amazing. He's joyful. He's always excited, and it it takes a lot of intentional effort to have a
Mm.
conversation with her and I. But when you do that, when you put that as a priority, then
Yeah.
you maintain that level of communication. And also, I'd say by stacking, which
Hmm.
is the form of journaling that we do, and
Yep.
that gets the emotions out, so you're not just bottled up, and then suddenly something triggers you, and then you just vomit whatever you've been feeling. You're more aware and in tune of your feelings and how to communicate them, and much more level-headed. Now, granted, that's part of my personality is I'm high pace from the pro
Yeah. Yeah.
scan. I am pretty level-headed as
You
a
are really level-headed.
um,
Yeah. But I'm sure, like everything else with pace people tend to let everything bottle up.
mhm.
You know.
Yep,
Yeah.
and I
You're like
used
that
to.
hose. You
In
got your
fact,
foot on the hose. Yeah.
I had I remember a girl said, like, with everything that I had experienced in my life, she's like, "You're like a ticking time bomb." I was like, "Never been told that," but no,
Never told that.
and that's the thing. I didn't never had outbursts of anger or
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
anything like that. But what it does inside of you is it creates
Mm.
limiting beliefs. It
Yes.
creates presuppositions on people. Creates unconscious bias.
Right. That's the thing about peace people. A lot of times, like people, when I say things reach a bursting point, sometimes it's not an external bursting point where you lash out at people, but inside you just have this like burst, like of emotions, and just like this breakdown inside. And like you said, these limiting beliefs become just a flood, and it just overwhelms you and the stuff like that, and where you almost become like paralyzed because you're in your head so deep that you just
Hmm.
sometimes don't even know what to do anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also,
So,
I mean, like the things that um, you don't realize that you're bringing in from the past, specifically
yeah.
in marriage. And
Oh
so
yeah.
for me, when I was 15, my mom, she had passed away, and
Mm.
and it was pretty traumatic because
Yeah. Yeah.
the night before, her and I went to church, that church that I was talking about,
Yeah.
and we'd only been in California for 2 years, and we went to that church on a Thursday night service. Is March, April 31st or 30th, and went to the service. She's lifting her hand, she's singing. I'm kind of looking at her like she's strange, and we go home that night. And my dad's up in Portland, Oregon on business. My sister didn't live with us at the time, and we have this random conversation. As a 15-year-old surfer, I was like, "Hey, mom, what's heaven going to be like?" And we're sitting on the couch, and she said, "Well, the Bible describes it as translucent streets of gold, where the Shekinah glory of God's presence will,
Yeah.
be shining through the buildings, and you won't need the sun." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And she's like, "It's basically going to be perfect on every end." And I was like, "Well, is there going to be waves in heaven? Can I surf in heaven?" And she's like, "Well, if God made the ocean here and you enjoy it and you enjoy surfing, is
Yeah.
it possible that heaven could be great,
That's
for that?" And I was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, it's possible." So we have a few more back and forth conversation, give each other a hug, "Love you, Marcus. Love you, mom." And I go to my room. She goes to her room. We go to sleep. Next morning, May 1st, I wake up at like 9:30 in the morning. I've already been at school.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, we're late for school. And I knock on her door and no answer. I walk in and she's sleeping. I go up to her, put my hand on her. I'm like, Mom, wake up. It's time. I'm late for school. And she doesn't move.
Oh,
And when I put my hand on her to shake her, there was something. Normally there's like
yeah.
something that pushes back but there's nothing.
Mm,
And long story short, without going into too much like gruesome detail, she had a seizure in her sleep and had
mm,
thrown up, and it went down her windpipe, and she
yep.
had died from asphyxiation.
Yep.
And so I had to pull her off the bed and give her CPR, and it was already too late. And the
Oh, wow.
autopsy said that she had passed away just a couple hours after she had gone to sleep, just a couple hours of
Yeah.
after that conversation.
Oh,
So you
wow.
think about like how poignant that timing was to
Yeah.
spend that last night with her and then have that conversation with her of, Mom, what's heaven going to be like? Because in 2 hours you're going to be there.
Yeah. That's
And
heavy.
so yeah, so I carried that. I didn't cry about it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And so it was just all in here, and finally I
All of
let
that.
it out and it felt so good. But yeah, I you know just learned initially to bottle things
Mm,
up, and so
yep.
it took intentional effort to let things out.
Yeah. My father passed away when I opened my first restaurant. I was like 3 months into my first restaurant. And, and I had everything invested into it and I couldn't leave to go to the funeral. So I had to, and I just basically, like you, I just kind of put it off to the side into a compartment and just didn't process it for a long time. I think about almost like 8 months later, almost maybe even a year later, I was just in my office at the restaurant and I just broke down. I mean, I just dropped to my knees and just bawled like a baby, and just all the emotion and building up just finally came just pouring out. And it was, I mean, but you got to be able to process stuff. You know, that's where I think that's
Yeah,
where stacking is so
yeah.
powerful. As an app that we use,
Hmm.
a Warrior app, stacking is so powerful because it gives you a way to process stuff, which is so critical nowadays. And you could call it, you can do journaling. There's all different ways, and the biggest thing I would tell anybody listening is that do not carry that around. That it will eat you up inside. You got to be able to process it in a healthy way and work through it. And then the stacking, and I was real resistant about doing stacking at first when I started with Warrior, but it's actually been a tool I find very, very clarifying and also very, very calming, in the sense that I feel like when I process it out through the app and it's asking me questions in the voice, and I'm basically putting through my emotions, or why do you feel this? What's the lesson you're learning? How do what's the biggest takeaway you have? It helps me process stuff in the sense that now I feel like I can deal with it so much better. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So true.
Yep. And then
And
the
it's
last,
like being on the other side of a therapist.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's good therapy too, by the way. And then the
Hmm.
last part of the core four is business and stuff like that. What do you do as far as making sure, as far as, okay, because you're working, you've got another business that you're running right now. We're also jumping into the Warrior restaurant stuff, and and you're getting into, you have your own coaching company now, Restaurant 911. What are some of the ways you balance that business with everything else?
Um, the first answer is reverse engineer production.
Yeah,
Getting clear, and this is kind of it all blends into one, but
yeah,
getting clear what is it that you really want,
yeah,
and then once you can clearly identify that target, and that was one thing I learned from Warrior, was that to replace the word goals with targets,
yep.
because goals are kind of like I hit it, but the wind was in
Okay.
my hair, and
Yeah,
yeah, but a target, I pictured like, doing archery. When you let
yep.
go, the next question is, did I hit my target? Yes or no. Live in the land of yes and no, not maybe.
Hmm.
And so once you get clear on what that goal is, then break it up and, set, you know, basically, lap it down into, daily work, weekly results, 30 and 60-day benchmarks with 90-day outcomes to eventually an impossible game, and have a
Right.
system. And initially, when I learned the Warriors Way, I didn't have the money to invest in the software or
Right.
the council meetings or anything. So I created a Trello board.
Yep.
Aha! And so while I was running the restaurant, I started using my door, my hit, my do, and my achieve list in Trello,
Mhm.
just how you had set it up. And so
Yeah.
it helped me keep everything in balance. And one thing I learned from Starbucks was routines. You don't you don't do things to where you just do. If you have 5 things to do, don't do all of one thing. Do a
Yeah.
little bit and just keep coming
Brilliant.
back, keep coming back, keep coming back. And then the same work is going to be there the next week, and then the following
Yep.
week, and the following week. And you're going to keep doing a little bit of each thing. And so when I
Mhm.
got on that cadence, then all of a sudden I started to see the operational side
Right.
start to move more efficiently.
Yeah.
And so it really aligned with what I was doing at the time. And now present day, I use a combination of time blocking. I use the app.
Mhm.
I write out my hot list, which is all the ideas in your head of like,
Yeah.
just randomly like, oh, I want to leave a video about this. Oh, I have an idea
Right. Right.
about this. And you want to get those ideas out and written down, whether it's on a napkin, whether it's on an app, wherever it is, you want voice memo, but you want to get those
Mhm.
ideas out, because if you think you're going to remember it later, you won't.
You won't. Nope. Yeah, I use the hot list. I kind of use this, I call it a brain dump. You know,
Hmm.
and a lot of that comes from that, the David Allen, getting things done kind of methodology, in the sense that your brain only has so much kind of mental RAM. You only have so much storage up in your brain. And when you try to keep all that stuff around, it becomes impossible to manage it all. So brain dumping is a huge thing we do in the TRC method. And that every month I tell, anytime somebody says, I feel overwhelmed, you know what you got to do? Yeah, brain dump. You got to brain dump it. You got to get it all out of your head, get it on paper. So then once you get on paper, now you can organize it. And we use the
Hmm.
TRC method. We use the 3P framework. So after you get everything out of your head, then you basically categorize it into different categories. So it's people, product, process. So I put everything in people, product, process. And once I have that kind of organized, then I just basically take those columns like people, product, process, and now I reorganize it by priorities. And just like in the TRC method, we have, like in the people part, we have mindset, culture, hiring. So I look at my people list and I
Hmm.
just organize it by that. My product list, the same thing. Food costs, menu, marketing. And in my process stuff, same thing, system, strategy, and profitability. Once I organize everything, now then I can actually start putting it on my action list. And like you said, using focus blocks and things to really start making small little notches on it. One of my favorite quotes in the world is Michelangelo. And it goes back to when he was talking about the David. And they said, how'd you carve that thing? The David took like, years and years to work on. And you think about that. How do you take this huge chunk of marble and have this sculpture, this beautiful like sculpture out of it? And Michelangelo had a great quote. He says, I saw the angel in the marble and I chiseled until I set it free. And I always tell people that your life is
Mm,
that piece of marble. And every day
that's
you're
good.
taking a chisel and you're just like carving out the stuff that's not doesn't serve you anymore. Carve away, remove the stuff that doesn't serve you anymore, and then focus on the stuff that does serve you. And eventually you have your own masterpiece. But that's what I love that quote. It's my favorite quote in the world. I saw the
Yeah,
angel in the marble and I
that
chiseled until I set it free.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I'd say the only other thing I'd add to it was the first book I ever got on personal development was by Stephen Covey, The Seven
Oh
Habits
yeah.
of Highly Effective People, and the time management matrix of important and
Oh yeah.
urgent. And that when I layered that on as well, because once you get those
Yep.
lists and you've got everything categorized, now, well, is this urgent and important, or is this important not urgent? Is it not important and not urgent? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
And so that helped me just get some clarity on how to strike.
Yeah. And then in my my little book, Outstanding Mindset, I use that same matrix, and I broke it down for restaurant owners because I feel like restaurant owners have the same problem in the sense that we don't know understand the dimensions of time. And so I basically broke it down the same thing, urgent, important. I call it, there's 4 dimensions of time. There's flow, there's demand, delusion, and distraction. Most restaurant owners live in demand, other people's demands. And if you live in that, dimension of distraction, you're basically living a life that's not fulfilled. You're basically just distracting yourself with, Netflix and all that crap and stuff like that. So yeah, powerful, powerful stuff. So if people want to reach out to you, how do they get a hold of
Yeah.
you, Marcus?
So you can go to my podcast. You can find it Restaurant 911, the podcast. It's
Awesome.
on Apple, Google, Stitcher, all the
Yep.
main ones. Then you can also email me at marcus@warriorrestaurants.com or
Mhm.
marcus@restaurant911.net. Either way, you can get a hold of me and
Yep.
we can talk.
And social media too. You're on Instagram, right?
Yep, social media. So Instagram is the restaurant _ 911. You can find me on
Mhm.
there, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, I want to say thanks for being here today, Marcus. I appreciate it, my brother. It is great to have you, hooked up with the Warrior Restaurants. I know we're just launching this movement, but I think in a short amount of time, Warrior Restaurants is going to become the premier kind of model for restaurant coaching around the world. Because again, it's not just about business; it's about having the have it all lifestyle. And Warrior Restaurants, our philosophy is that success without fulfillment is failure. And we don't want you just to have a successful restaurant. That's actually pretty easy. I've done it for 14 years, helped 2,800 restaurants get that restaurant success. But now I find that there's a lot of restaurants missing those other those other 3 areas of their core 4. So we want you to have the body. We want you to have the being, the connections. We want you to have those balance, those relationships that are passionate, that means something, have everything, and have the successful restaurant. So if we can help you out, please let us know how we can help you move forward on your goals. And you can always just head over to warriorrestaurants.com. You can check out, we got a little introduction video there. It talks about my story. And if you want to check it out and schedule an application to talk to us about Warrior Restaurants, we're more than happy to talk to you anytime.
Sounds good. Thanks for
Thanks,
having me,
Paul.
Donald.
Appreciate you, man.